Angie, why is it so easy to fill out limiting beliefs, but almost paralyzing to figure out an alternative, think this, not that? How many of you are having trouble with this? It's very easy to see where you doubt yourself, but it's super hard to come up with the alternative thought that you're going to substitute. Well, the reason why it's hard is because you actually believe these thoughts. And these thoughts have become patterns, and they've become habits, and they've become so prevalent in your life that they're almost like the co-host of your life. If you think about it, you are the star of your life. But if the supporting actor is a limiting belief that constantly tells you that you're not good enough, or that you're not worthy, or that you'll never succeed, then it's no wonder that you believe it, because the co-star of your life is your limiting beliefs. And so it's not easy to change your limiting beliefs, but it is simple. And it begins with you identifying them and then substituting them. So the most, I think, effective way of beginning the process of teaching yourself how to identify a limiting belief and then come up with your own substitute positive belief as a way to change the negative pattern in your mind is to use the power of objectivity. So write down all your limiting beliefs. And I'm going to go through this in detail in just a second. Write down all your limiting beliefs. I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. Nothing works out for me. Nobody's going to love me. Whatever the fuck it is that you think that's bringing you down. And then you can ask yourself this. What would Mel say? If Mel were sitting here across from me, what would Mel say? Another thing you can do, you can write the opposite of what you're thinking. And you may not believe it. It's okay. Because what we're doing is training you in a new pattern. And one of the things that Angie asked is she wanted to know, what were my limiting beliefs? So yesterday we sent out this workbook, the Best Decade Ever Toolkit. It's in your email. If you go to the Facebook group, Best Decade Ever with Mel Robbins, it's also listed on the files. You'll find a download for this. Check your junk email if you didn't get it. But so my limiting beliefs. So I want to have the #1 talk show of the decade. And the #1 talk show of the decade right now seems to be Ellen. And so it's interesting because a lot of my limiting beliefs, I think, are provoked by the fact that I'm the newcomer in a space that I have huge dreams of making a mark in and dominating. So one of my limiting beliefs is someone's already done it. How many of you have that one? My dream has already been done. So my substitute thought, because this feels kind of true, doesn't it? Somebody's already done it. And then my substitute thought, the think this, not that, is, well, they haven't done it my way yet. It hasn't been done by me yet. Do you see what I mean? So somebody else has done it. Okay, I get it. It hasn't been done by me yet. It'll never happen. It'll never happen. How many of you have that limiting belief? It'll never happen. My substitute belief, it hasn't happened yet. So I'm acknowledging that it hasn't happened, but I'm adding on the yet as a way to keep my mind in the positive. It didn't happen last time, so it's not going to happen this time. How many of you have that one? Yeah. This is what I say. I wasn't ready then. I'm ready now. Because it didn't happen last time because I didn't know everything I know now. I'm ready now. I don't deserve it. How many of you have this limiting belief? I don't deserve it. My thought is, if I work hard, I'll earn it. Do you see that? So it flips from a statement where I'm bashing my self-worth, I don't deserve it, to a statement about putting in the effort. If I work hard, I'll earn it. Oh, I've got this story that I'm the bad news bears, that I'm literally like the person with the worst equipment, and I'm the underdog, and I'm underfunded, and why does it have to be so hard, and why does it seem so much easier for everybody else, and blah, 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 blah. And I flip that into, I love being underestimated, and I love being the underdog. In a very weird way, as much as it exhausts me, it also empowers me. Here's a specific limiting belief. How the fuck am I going to compete with Ellen? I can't compete with Ellen. Especially when she's been at it for 20 years. She has the budget of God and an army of people that are supporting her. I mean, there was something she did announced yesterday on social media that I was so like, oh, of course. And I was so jealous. She announced a partnership with Starbucks where she's encouraging people to pay for somebody's coffee using the Starbucks app behind them in line. And then take a video of it and upload it. And they're going to bring them on the show. And I was like, oh, will I ever get there? Will I ever get to do cool stuff like that? And the answer is yeah. She proves it's possible. And also, I can take the 10 years and be like, and in 20 years, I won't even recognize the cool stuff I'll be able to do if I put in the work. So take that jealousy or somebody else or whatever and say it proves it's possible. Now put in the work. So those are some of my limiting beliefs, and that's how you can do it. And by the way, if you can't do that exercise successfully on your own, post in the Facebook group and tell people this is your limiting belief. Can somebody help you come up with a substitute positive belief so that you can think this, not that? Ask somebody in your life to help you. And then what you do is when you find yourself going down the route of that negative thought, it'll never happen. You're going to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, use the 5-second rule to interrupt the negative belief. And then you are going to insert the positive belief. It hasn't happened yet. That's it. Write down, what is your limiting belief? What is the thing that you think about yourself? Maybe your parents or your mother or your father taught you to think that way about yourself. Maybe you went through a horrible breakup and that person made you feel unworthy. Maybe you've had a bunch of setbacks in your life and that's what gave you that limiting belief. But what is your limiting belief? Because today, what we're going to do today is we're going to take it a step further. Now that you've identified your limiting belief, we're going to look at what is it costing you to choose to repeat it. Because remember the quote I started with. You have a choice right now. You get to repeat the things you've always done, or you can evolve them and become more deliberate. Let's talk about the cost of that limiting belief. I'm going to go first. So write down your limiting belief. I see a lot of, I'm not good enough. My mental health is holding me back. I can't run a successful business. I'm lazy and I can't do anything. I'm not healthy enough. Money is the issue. I'm scared to fail. What is the limiting belief that you have? I'm certain it has something to do with not being enough. Once you've written that down, you're afraid of failure. You don't deserve success, all that kind of stuff. I don't know how to start. These are excellent. You're doing an excellent job. The first step to moving from that default into getting deliberate is actually seeing it. So seeing it is fantastic because now we can start to understand that, whoa, this got programmed in. It's my default mode. I want to get rid of it. How do we get rid of it? Well, let's first identify why you want to. Let's take a hard look at the cost of having this limiting belief. So in order to figure out the cost of having the limiting belief, what's my limiting belief? That I'm not a good person. That's my limiting belief. That I am not a good person. That you don't think I'm a good person. That I don't think I'm a good person. And here's what you're going to do in order to identify the cost, okay? You're going to ask yourself 3 questions, and they're very simple. What is this limiting belief in my case that I'm not a good person? What does it cost me in my past to think this way? What is it costing me in this present moment to think that I'm not a good person? And here's the kicker. If I don't evolve this, if I don't get deliberate, what is it going to cost me in the future to continue to think that I'm not a good person? So in the past, thinking that I'm not a good person, it did a bunch of things. First of all, it made me very sad. Secondly, it made me a liar because I assumed that I wasn't good enough and I'm not a good person, so I got to pretend to be somebody else. It also made me cheat on people because I didn't think I deserved love. And it also, by believing that I wasn't a good person, it somehow justified the bad behavior. I mean, if I'm a bad person, then I do bad things, right? What does it cost me in the present to believe that I'm not a good person? Well, it costs me a lot of joy. It costs me connection in friendships because I'm constantly questioning whether or not people actually like me for me. It makes me second guess myself and whether or not I deserve the success. And what does it cost me in the future? It's going to cost me everything. If I continue to repeat this pattern and I continue to allow myself to default to believing that I'm not a good person, I will never be fully happy. I will never be fully present. I probably will not be successful when we launch this new daytime talk show in the fall. And so I got a choice to make, and I want to get rid of this because I can see what allowing myself to believe that I'm not a good person is costing me. This exercise of identifying your limiting belief and then seeing what it's cost you in your past, your present, and your future is so important for you to do that I want to give you another example. So to really, really drive it home, okay? And so I want to bring in my husband. Why don't you scoot on this? I don't know if you can lean in on that thing. You sit on this chair. I'm going to bring in my husband, Christopher Robbins. Yes, if you've ever been a fan of Winnie the Pooh, his name is Christopher Robbins. And Chris is going to go through this exercise too. And I think it's important for we're sharing a chair here, and so we're like really close. I think it's important for you guys to know that Chris is one of the partners in our media company. He's our CFO, and he's also the founder of a men's retreat called Soul Degree. And he's a yoga instructor and president of the Booster Club. So this is a guy that's like really accomplished and super amazing. So with that context, founder of Soul Degree, what's your limiting belief?
Well, of course, it would be appropriate that I think forever it's just been that I'm not good enough, I think that's it, succinctly, that I'm not living up. And certainly in the past, it's been all around the decisions I've made career-wise, never thinking that I was in fact good enough, which just took away from, I suppose, all the joy that I could have had.
Were you really sad when you were little?
Yeah, I think I was just down and out, probably feeling alone, and like the decisions I had made along the path were not the right ones, and then that subsequently not performing, and or at least not performing to my own expectation.
So how has not feeling good enough? I can see how it would make you feel sad, especially, there's so much pressure on men to succeed, feeling like you weren't good enough in your career, blah, blah, blah. Even ski racing, because you grew up as a kid ski racing. How did feeling not good enough impact the way you raced?
I probably just could have skied a lot better than even I did because I was constantly thinking it wasn't good enough.
And now what about in the present? What is the default belief that you're not good? Is it like, how is it still in your life in this moment? Because here's the thing about a limiting belief, guys, is that everybody will look at you on the outside and they'll be convinced you don't have it. They'll be shocked that you believe that about yourself. And that's why it's important for you to be honest with yourself about what your limiting belief is, because it's something you are doing to yourself. So what is the belief that you're not good enough? How is that impacting your life right now, Chris?
Probably has everything to do with just being the point parent. As much as I love being the point parent and having the time with the kids that I have, given your own schedule.
Let me explain what that means. So Chris and I Chris and I, because of the amount of work that I use, Chris is the one that is home more often. He's the one that is really in charge of what's going on with the kids. He has been home for these last 3 to 4 years, playing a huge role in the back end of our company. But the primary role is the parent. And traditionally, at least in the United States, it's the woman that does that. And so it's been, I think, a very fulfilling yet confronting thing for Chris to be playing that role in, am I saying this correctly?
Totally.
Just to bring everybody up to speed?
Just embracing the idea that me being the one at home handling the lion's share of the things at home are of course, consistent with my negative belief that that's not good enough, that that's not being supportive enough.
Is it also with success? Like that's not enough
Yeah,
in terms
it's
of your own
not-
career, even though you
Yeah, I
founded a
think
men's retreat?
Well,
Seriously.
you mean,
Well, you run Soul Degree, you run the booster club for the high school, you teach yoga classes, you are a CFO, and it's still not enough. And here's the thing that's so interesting, everybody. I'm going to ask Chris a question he doesn't know I'm going to ask him. If you could go back and do something different these last 3 or 4 years and actually go and work and build a business that's solely your own and not be around, and I mean, would you trade the years that you've had with our kids, the last 3 years, or for something else?
no, definitely not.
Well, see, then that's the thing that's crazy. Is here you're sitting here torturing yourself saying, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, it's not enough, it's not enough. But given the option, if we could wave a magic wand and change everything, and the circumstances would be different, but you had to trade the time that you had with our kids, would you do it? The answer is no. So here's the thing that's interesting, and I'm so happy that you admitted to that, because it points out the fact that your default thinking isn't logical. It's just a habit. It's something you've been doing for so long that you don't even realize it. And even though it doesn't serve you, and even though, like Chris just said, he would never change a thing, and yet he still thinks it's not enough. That to me means that there is some automation here that's going on in your brain where it's set on default. Oh, I got to just think I'm not enough. I got to think I'm not enough. I got to think I'm not enough. You know? Well, here's the bigger question. If you allow this default mode to stay programmed in your brain, how is that going to impact your future? Particularly if you think about things like your aspirations for Soul Degree, the men's retreat that you run.
I think that if it perpetuates, then I'm obviously my own impediment to what I want it to be. You know, if I'm constantly in that mindset of it's not enough, I haven't done enough, then how could Soul Degree ever become what it should be?
What do you want it to become?
I think I would love to see it touch as many men's lives.
You're about to cry, I could tell.
Yeah, as possible.
Why do you get choked up?
Just because I know the impact. I've experienced the positive impact that it can have, and it's limitless, I think, in the difference that it could make, regardless even of your age. So
Do you see how your limiting belief, the default thinking that you're not enough, will prevent you from...
Oh, totally.
How does it stop you when you think you're not enough? How does it stop you? Like, what are the things that you do when you start getting in that mindset?
Well, it's probably things that you don't do, right? Because if you're not going to be good enough, well, why go do that thing? Whether it's write more or, sort of test the elasticity of what Soul Degree could be also. I mean, it's in a state where there's still so much that we could do to enhance the experience, have it reach more people, which starts with my own. Again, I think part of the limitation is that I've always argued, hey, I'm a shitty marketer. I'm not good at putting the word out, if you will. And, even this conversation talking about something like soul degree is.
How many of you can relate to this?
I could be a lot better at that.
You're just stopping yourself, not all the time because of your limiting belief. Like you go to write a blog post about the thing that fills your heart and you're like, ooh, should I really put this out there? That's your limiting belief. That's your default setting. And you're dead right, Chris, and it's the same thing for me and the same thing for Mandy. What was yours?
I'll never get there.
I'll never get there. I love that one. I'll never get there. Yeah. Because you can feel like just the no matter how hard I try, it's never going to be enough. I'm never going to get there. It's never going to happen. And how that sets you up to just race and race and race and race. And Danielle, what's yours?
But I'm not smart enough.
I'm not smart enough. Yeah, I'm not smart enough to do this. And so if your belief, the default that got programmed a long time ago is I'm not smart enough, then you'll tell yourself, I'm not smart enough to write this blog post. I'm not smart enough to figure this out. I'm not smart enough to build that kind of business. I'm not smart enough to attract the kind of person that I want. And the thing that's scary about default settings, everybody, is that not only are they automated in the default network in your brain, but they're a protection mechanism. By thinking you're not good enough, not smart enough, I'll never get there, not a good person, you actually hold yourself back. And that's one of the reasons why we cling to it. And so if you haven't already, because we're going to wrap up this training and I'm going to tell you what's coming up tomorrow and then we're going to answer questions. If you haven't already,
you got to hear the quote though from Nepo today.
Oh, okay.
It's so on point.
See, soul
topic.
Degree right here. So every
it's
morning.
It's so cheesy, but
no,
it's
it's
so
not.
good.
Every morning, Chris and I mostly sometimes. Chris reads from this. This is so tattered. He's been doing it for years. My mom also reads this book every single day. Your mom reads this book every single day. It's a page or two every single day. Mark Nero was fighting cancer when he wrote this, and it's beautiful. So
Nepo.
Mark Nepo. Did I say it wrong? Nemo. I said Nemo.
But
Finding Nemo.
I'll just read a snippet because it's so on point for January 3rd. That is the 3rd, right? Today?
Yeah.
Each person is born with an unencumbered spot, free of expectation and regret, free of ambition and embarrassment, free of fear and worry, an umbilical spot of grace where we are each first touched by God. It is this spot of grace that issues peace. Psychologists call this spot the psyche, theologians call it the soul, Jung calls it the seat of the unconscious, Hindu masters call it the Atman, Buddhists call it Dharma, Rilke calls it inwardness, Sufis call it Qualb, and Jesus calls it the center of our love. To know this spot of inwardness is to know who we are, not by surface markers of identity, not by where we work, or what we wear, or how we like to be addressed, but by feeling our place in relation to the infinite and by inhabiting it. This is the hard, lifelong task, for the nature of becoming is a constant filming over where we begin, while the nature of being is a constant erosion of what is not essential.
Oh.
Each of us lives in the midst of this ongoing tension, growing tarnished or covered over, only to be worn back to that incorruptible spot of grace at our core.
Well, I would say the one word that came to mind when you were reading that was, let's see if I can find it, not essential. You know what's not essential is your default thinking and your negative belief. And in fact, it is essential that you get rid of it. You're awesome. You don't have to go. I'm gonna keep wrapping.
I am gonna go.
You are going? Where are you going?
I'm sure
He's got a blog post to write because now he's gotten rid of his limiting belief. Bye.
See ya.
Okay. So tomorrow, I want you to write your limiting belief in there. And here's another thing. What is it costing you right now? What are the things you're not doing because of that limiting belief? For me, not being a good person, I think it's the thing that keeps me isolating myself. And it also, I can see how, just like Chris was explaining, that his limiting belief has him not doing things like writing more blog posts and putting himself out there. Even though I'm out there, there's, I think, a level to which I'm not because of this belief that I'm not a good person. So I want you to write in the comments what's your limiting belief and what's it costing you right now. What are you not doing because of it? And I want to come back to the opening quote. You have a choice. You're either going to repeat what you're doing or you're going to evolve it. And when you ask yourself these 3 questions, what is my limiting belief cost me in the past? What's it costing me right now? And what is it going to cost me if I continue to choose to do it? If I continue to choose to be on default? Hopefully getting in touch with that will help you, give you, motivate you, push you to choose to be deliberate in what you're thinking next. Because tomorrow what we're going to be talking about is how do you create a deliberate belief, one that you don't believe yet. We're going to teach you how to think this, not that. Because it's essential that you have something to go to for when you catch yourself going to that default. So trust me when I tell you, tomorrow we are going to take you from the, oh my God, I need to stop doing this, and into the mode of, okay, I got this. I can think this, not that. Many of you were startled to discover just how often you're thinking really nasty things about yourself. You were bummed and a little bit sad to realize, holy cow, I can't believe how often I tell myself I'm not good enough. I can't believe how often I tell myself that my ideas aren't good and I shut myself up. And there were just as many of you that were liberated when you started to realize, wait a minute, this isn't the voice of God talking to me. This is some programming that's set on default. I don't have to live my life and I don't have to have a future where I constantly say things that are negative to myself. This is the most miraculous thing that I've ever heard. And so what I want you to do in the comments is I want you to write what was the limiting belief or the negative thing that kept coming up, because there were a lot of themes. Christine Nichols said that her limiting belief is that she believes she's a quitter. She believes she can't finish anything. And she started to see it, examples of it over and over and over again. And what she also started to realize is, holy cow, it's a lie. There's lots of things that I've finished in my life, but if I continue to have the limiting belief that I'm a quitter, if I look out to the future, I will be giving myself permission to not go for harder things. I will give myself permission to quit. A lot of the common beliefs that we heard was that I'm too old. How many of you feel like you're too old to get the things that you want in your life? That is super common. So if you think I'm too old to do this, if you think I've run out of time, if you think, who am I at the age that I am or as young as I am to think that I could do this thing, first of all, you're wrong. And secondly, that's a limiting belief that is stopping you. It's a default mode that we need to get you out of. Huge one for you all was, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough when it comes to other people. I'm not as good as other people. And let me tell you something. This is an epidemic, feeling like you're not good enough, because way too many of us spend our days comparing our imperfect lives to perfect strangers on the internet. And so the feeling like you're not good enough, you're not measuring up, that there's some sort of imaginary race that you're running against the rest of humanity, and that by now, at this point in your life, you're supposed to be at a certain place. And how do you know that? Because every time you look on social media, there are hundreds of people in your face that seem to be at the place that you thought you would be. And so that just reinforces it. And oh my God, the default network is getting stronger. If that's how you feel, you're not alone. That was the single biggest one that we noticed in all of your comments from all over the world. I am not good enough. And we heard loud and clear that you got it from your mom, or you got it from your dad, or you got it from some horrible person that you were in a relationship with. And the problem is you started to believe it, and it got encoded in the default network. So now that you've seen it, good job. You can't get rid of the default until you actually spot it. And now that you've seen it, I want you to realize for the rest of your life, you have a job. And your job is to make sure that when that default network kicks back up and you start to murmur that you're too old, you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, that is a moment where you have got to do a mindset reset. And the way that you're going to do it, because you're learning that there's 2 modes of your brain, the default, I'm not good enough, and the deliberate, oh yeah, I can try, is we're going to teach you that you can think this, not that. that whenever this default mode comes up of I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not enough, whatever enough is, that you can spot it as the default and you can get deliberate and you can say something different. In the body of this broadcast on Facebook, on YouTube, where else are we putting this?
Twitter.
On Twitter, although it won't be on Twitter, the copy. But in the email that we're about to send you with links to this video, and on YouTube and on Facebook, we are going to give you a very long description of alternatives on how you think this, not that. And we're going to give you some things that you can play around with to insert to start to build a deliberate network. And if you don't like these, no problem. Make something up that you really like. But the point is that if you don't get deliberate, you will be stuck with the default mode of thinking. And the way that you reprogram your default mode of thinking so that the default becomes positive and the default becomes courageous and the default becomes loving is first you catch the negative default, and second, you direct it to something deliberate. So instead of thinking, no one likes me, this is mine because I think I'm a bad person. No one likes me. What I want you to think instead is the right people love me. That's pretty powerful. That's really powerful for me. I constantly remind myself that the right people love me, that the right people are in my life. Instead of saying, oh, nobody likes me or I'm not part of that group, I remind myself that the right people, the people I need, they're the ones that are in my life right now. If you're somebody who says, I'm too old, here's what I want you to say, I have plenty of time. Or you could say, I have so much experience, I'm definitely going to succeed. If you say, I'm too young, then say anything you want, from I have plenty of time to learn what I need to learn, to being young is an advantage, to whatever it is. The point that I'm trying to make is, if your default is negative, I don't want you to think that. I want you to catch it when you do, and then I want you to think this, something positive. If you're constantly thinking, I'm behind, you look at social media and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm losing the race of life. Then I want you to think, I'm on my own timeline. It's not I'm behind, it's I'm doing things in my own time. Another one you could say if you say I'm behind is I'm exactly where I need to be. One of the big things that I always say is that you never move to the next level of your life until you learn the lesson in this one. Instead of thinking I'm not smart enough, I want you to think, if I put in the work, I can do anything. Instead of thinking I'm not smart enough, say, hey, if I put in the work, I can learn anything. If I put in the work, I can master anything. If I put in the work, I can build anything. It's not about smarts. It's about the effort that I put in. That's another thing that you could say. Instead of saying I'm not smart enough, go, well, hey, you dummy, it's not about being smart. It's about the work. Make this yours. If you can make it funny, fantastic, because then that cuts the seriousness that so many of us bring to trying to change our lives. This can be fun, Instead of thinking I'm not good enough, I love this one. How about I'm doing the best I can? Or I'm exactly where I need to be. I think one of the most important things that you can do in life is you can ask for what you need. You can ask it of yourself. You can ask it of your work. You can ask it of your spouse. You can ask it of your family. You can ask it of your friends. And you should. Because when you ask for what you need, you are honoring what's true for you. Now, here's the interesting thing. You might not get it. And getting what you are asking for, it's not the point. When you have the courage to stop listening to those limiting default beliefs and start asking of yourself and asking of the people around you the things that you need, what you're doing in the asking is you are honoring the best part of you. And whatever it is that you receive, trust me, you need this right now because you're learning something in it. There is no experience in your life that is wasted. And so I know that many of you, because I've been reading the comments every single day, so has every member of our team. I know that so many of you are feeling at a very low point. I know you're feeling beaten down. I want to tell you something. There is something to learn in this. And one of the places that you can start is, instead of thinking about how miserable things are, and instead of thinking about how broken you feel, I want you to think about how much you've survived. I want you to think about the fact that even though you may feel broken and you may feel scared and you may feel completely overwhelmed, that in order to get beyond this, you got to understand that the world and your future are not broken and overwhelming. In fact, they are there to help you make the changes that you need. I truly believe this. I truly believe this. And so again, today, you're going to continue what you were doing yesterday, because guess what? Now that I've opened Pandora's box and you understand there's a default mode and there's a deliberate mode to the way that you think, and now that you've spent a day looking at how your default thoughts kind of stink and they make you feel bad, and you realize, wow, I could change through deliberate thinking the way that I talk to myself, this is something you're going to practice for the rest of your life. This is not a one and done. This is not an event. This is a practice. This is a process, and this is a skill. And so here's what I want you to do today. I want you to write down what is in the comments, what is your limiting belief, and what is it that you're going to think deliberately when that limiting belief comes up. So for me, when the belief comes up, nobody likes me. That's the default mode. The deliberate thing I'm going to think is the right people love me. The other one that I have is I'm constantly worried that I'm disappointing somebody. Constantly. And so when I'm worried and I feel that spidey sense come up, that tingly thing that's in your body, like, uh-oh, am I disappointing that person? Am I disappointing that person? Instead of thinking that, I'm going to think the only person I have to worry about not disappointing is me, because I'm the only person that I'm in control of anyway. In fact, I just had a big conversation with my daughter about this, about how we get so wrapped up in our lives about making sure other people are okay. And so we aren't direct, we hide information, we worry about things. And the easiest way to live your life is to just speak plainly about what's true for you. What did I just say earlier? Ask for what you need. And that also includes telling the truth about what you're thinking, about what you're doing, about who you're spending your time with. Because the minute that you're hiding information, you're kind of managing stuff with people, you're now in the default mode, because you're managing disappointing people, you're managing whether or not people like you, you're thinking that you're not good enough, so you're lying and hiding information. That's how the default mode and all these negative thinkings start to creep in and make you do things that you know you shouldn't be doing. But it starts with your thinking. If you change how you think, you will change your life. Rad from YouTube. What's the difference between limiting beliefs and the harsh reality we are living in? It's an excellent question, Rad. And the way that I'm going to answer it, I hope this makes sense. When you have a limiting belief, so that default network in your mind is programmed to think you're not enough, or the default network in your mind is programmed to think it never works out for me, or the default network in your mind is programmed to say, I'm never going to make it. What happens with a limiting belief is that you actively, because of the default network in your brain, is your brain is actively filtering in and out information that agrees with the limiting belief. And so your whole mind is set up to view the world and look for evidence that you're not enough, that things aren't working out, that you're never going to make it. So there's a big difference between the reality that you're food compromised, the reality that you're unemployed, the reality that you're living with depression, the reality that you're divorced, the reality that you dropped out of school and you want to go back and now study to become a nurse. Those are harsh or can be harsh realities. It can be liberating realities for some people, not everybody, of course, because those are very, very real and tough circumstances, okay, to be food deprived. I don't mean to say that that's a liberating circumstance. I meant it from the dropping out and going back to school. So let me be clear. Very harsh reality to be food compromised. Very harsh reality to be unemployed. Very harsh reality to live with depression. Very harsh reality to get dumped. Very harsh reality to have a diagnosis that's terrifying. Get it. I totally get it. That is very different than having the harsh reality be your brain and you've got a terrible diagnosis and all your brain is doing is saying, I'm going to die. I'm never going to survive this. My chances are You got it? So that you're making it worse because of your default settings. I want to train you, regardless of the harsh circumstances that you're living in, that you get to choose how you view the circumstances. You get to choose how you view the future. You get to choose whether or not you see nothing but problems, nothing but excuses, nothing but reasons to be depressed and sad and to check out, or whether you can train yourself to still have hope, to still get up and try, to still get up and be positive, to still get up and look for opportunities to make your life just a little bit better. That's the difference between harsh realities and your limiting beliefs. Harsh realities are temporary. You can change them. Limiting beliefs will keep you stuck in a permanent mental state because you are continuing to look for evidence to make negative beliefs true. And that's why we want to turn you into a deliberate thinker. This is from Castor Rock. What if your limiting belief has truth to it? Of course it has truth to it. If you tell yourself something else, aren't you delusional? No. Listen, your limiting belief has truth to it because guess what? In the past, you believed the fact that you weren't enough. And that justified you in not doing things. And so you have evidence. Look, I used to believe I was a really bad person. I did horrible things because I believed I was a bad person. I was a bad person. You see, this is why it's paramount that you get control of your limiting beliefs. If you believe you're a bad person, you will do bad things. You will cheat on people. You will lie. You will drink too much. You might steal. You will rob yourself of all of the potential and joy and opportunity of your life because you believe you're a bad person. So why the hell not just do those bad things? See, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You better believe you have evidence because you believed it. All you're going to see is evidence for where you gave up. All you're going to see is evidence for where you didn't believe in yourself. All you're going to see is evidence for where you hung out with people far too long that treated you like garbage because you thought you were garbage. Of course it has truth to it because you acted consistently with it. This is why if you want to get healthy, you have to change your belief system that you are somebody that can be healthy. Because if you believe that you're a fat, lazy, unhealthy slob and you're standing in front of the refrigerator, guess what a fat, lazy, unhealthy slob is going to grab? Something that a fat, lazy, unhealthy slob would eat. If that's what you believe, that's how you act. Which is why it's paramount that you identify, holy cow, that's my default way of thinking. No wonder I act the way I act. Now let's get deliberate. I am getting healthier every day. You tell yourself that. You open the fridge, I am getting healthier every day. And you start to look inside that. What are you going to pick? You're going to get the apple. You're going to eat the whole food. You're not going to eat the processed junk. It starts with your belief system. And so, yes, your limiting belief has truth in it. And you, to break the cycle, must change your belief to something that's powerful and expansive and positive. Because guess what? The more that you think this positive thing, the more you're going to see the truth in it. And the more consistently you're going to act with it. Because I am a super positive and optimistic person. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I have a brain that any chance it gets will try to convince me that I've done something wrong.
Right. I think we're all like that. Like,
Yes.
I have to be honest. I feel that way sometimes when you get a text from someone or you text someone and they don't text you back in like a day or two, you automatically start thinking, are they mad at me?
Yes.
What did I do? So
Yes.
how did you get beyond that? Because I know a lot of people are feeling that right now.
Right.
How did you get past that?
I didn't. So what I'm trying to say is that you will always and forever need to wrestle your brain. You will always and forever have to fight to focus on the positive. You will always and forever have to catch yourself when your mind drifts to the negative. And the reason why that is true is because in your day-to-day life, there will always be things that trigger old patterns. Always, whether it's a text that doesn't get responded to, or seeing a group of your friends out for lunch and nobody invited you, and instead of inserting, oh, they just bumped into each other dropping kids off at school, that's why they made an impromptu plan. Of course, they're not thinking about me right now, and they don't need to be. Instead of inserting that, you insert, what did I do wrong?
Right.
And so I think that it's really important for everybody to understand this is normal. This is what everybody's dealing with.
Yeah.
This is what you need to get serious about catching and changing.
Right.
And just because you teach yourself, whether it's through the high five habit, or it's through the 5-second rule, or it's through anything else that, anybody else that inspires you is teaching you, letting your fears make you fierce, you will have to use these tools.
Right. And I was actually going to say, I feel like your 5-second rule, I want you to touch on that just a little bit. Your book, The 5-Second Rule, can you talk about how that in this situation can be beneficial and how you use that?
Okay, great. So the 5-second rule is a simple little brain hack, has a lot of science. It's going to sound dumb, but it's really, really powerful. In a moment where you're either hesitating or you're thinking something really rotten, like, oh, there's an awkward pause in this conversation. I bet she doesn't actually like me. You're inserting something. Just count backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1s. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the counting backwards interrupts the negative thought. So the second I start counting backwards, as my mind is telling me, oh, this person must not like you. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're like, boop, slap you out of my mind. And the counting backwards makes this part of your brain focus on the counting. And the second that you get to 1, you have a moment of control. And that's where you can insert a different thought.
Yes. I love that. It's so simple. And that is your superpower. Simplicity is your superpower. I don't know if anyone's told you about it, but simplicity is your superpower. And I think that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, because we always have to change those limiting beliefs. And I say into liberating affirmations, but you also work a lot with limiting beliefs.
Yes.
Right? And can you kind of dive into that and like how you really work with your limiting beliefs on a regular basis?
Well, so staying on the 5-second rule for a second, the 5-second rule is extraordinarily powerful because step 1 of breaking and replacing limiting beliefs that have probably been in your brain for a lifetime. And when you really start to examine them, might actually be generational.
Yeah.
So your limiting beliefs may be your mother's limiting beliefs and your grandmother's limiting beliefs and your great-grandmother's limiting beliefs, because the human brain is designed to learn patterns. So if you hear somebody either being hard on themselves or being hard on you as a child, you tend to adopt that pattern of speaking as your own to yourself. And so step 1 of breaking and replacing limiting beliefs is to start to become aware of what those beliefs are.
Right.
And so for today, the next week, whatever, I want you to just notice when your mind or your mood drifts to a negative place. And it's important to just notice it. That's it. Just notice it. You're not going to be able to replace it just yet because you're so used to drifting into this negative landscape. And, the experts that study thought patterns say that we have between 50 and 80,000 thoughts a day. They estimate that between 80 to 90% of them are negative. And so your resting state is likely negative. And so the first step is, let's just start to pay attention. And there's a simple way to pay attention. You don't even have to be paying attention to what you're thinking about. Just pay attention to whether or not you're present or whether or not your energy is low. That's it. If your energy feels kind of low, if you feel kind of heavy, if you feel kind of like just in a negative emotional state, I guarantee you your mind's probably negative. So that's step one. Step two, when you start to realize you're there, just immediately take control in 5 seconds. Count backwards. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It'll snap you out of autopilot in the subconscious negative state into the conscious part of your brain. And then say this: I'm not thinking about that. I'm not thinking about that. And I want you to start there, because we cannot trust you. And I'm saying that for real. You cannot trust yourself, having thought these negative things for this long, to actually successfully punch them in the face and then replace them with something positive. We got to just get skilled at spotting it and interrupting it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm not thinking about that. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm not thinking about that. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm not thinking about that. And for the first week, you might say, I'm not thinking about that 73 times a day. But what you're doing is you're doing that hand to fist combat with the negative thoughts that run on default. You're like, punch, no, I'm not doing that. Punch, I'm not thinking about that. 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 Then you can get into what you're talking about, which is the work of replacing the thought. And you can do that through affirmations that you believe, or you can do that through this new thing that we're talking about called the high five habit.
I love that. And I want to let you just keep rolling on like how you do that. How do you actually turn around? Because I think we are to a place where some people are acknowledge it and some people aren't. But for those who say, okay, I'm going to acknowledge this is negative. I'm not feeling good. I'm feeling a funk. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now how do they start to shift?
I had one happen today. I'll share one today. You guys want to hear a limiting belief that crept in today? Okay.
Sorry, someone says they're making the chicken wings right now.
Oh, you're making the chicken wings? That's hilarious. I'm going to share with you a limiting belief that crept in today. And I'm embarrassed to share this, because if you can't cheer for people that you admire and adore and love, how in the hell can you expect them to cheer for you? But I am a human being and I have my own insecurities. And here's what happened. I read yesterday that Brene Brown, a remarkable woman, a researcher and a professor and a 4 times over New York Times bestselling #1 author, TED Talk phenom. She has taught the world all about vulnerability. If anybody deserves all of the accolades and riches and reach and impact that comes with being wildly successful, it is Brene Brown. Nonetheless, this is not a story about Brene Brown. This is a story about Mel Robbins' limiting beliefs. Because your limiting beliefs, I don't think they ever leave you. I just think that the scale of it all either gets bigger or smaller depending on where you are in what you're up to. So yesterday, I don't even know what the hell I was doing, but I noticed a tweet congratulating Brene because she is launching her podcast. Thank God, haven't we all been wanting a podcast from Brene Brown? Of course. And she announced it 3 days ago, and it is already #1. It hasn't even launched yet. It doesn't launch till March. She's beating Joe Rogan, who has been the king of podcasts forever. She's #1 without a podcast that's live, everybody. I immediately saw that and was like, I can't wait to listen to it. And you want to know the second thing I thought? Fuck, I will never be that successful. Might as well not even launch a podcast. Brene Brown's already out there unlocking everybody and talking about emotional fitness and messiness. And oh man, no room for me. I'm sharing this with you, even though it's an embarrassing and vulnerable and small, meaning mentally small story, because I want you to understand that your limiting beliefs, my limiting beliefs, they will always be there. It's part of being human. And when I feel that kind of self-imposed discouragement, to me, that's a sign that I really want something, but I'm scared. That's what that means. I am in the middle of lots of talks about podcasts right now. And I am nervous about launching one. I'm nervous about my capacity to do it. I'm nervous about the amount of time that it's going to take. I'm nervous that there's 750,000 podcasts out there for real. And how do you break through and provide value when there's so much noise? And, you know, my ego's also like, I want to launch something that's really successful. And so these are all, again, valid things that come up. And I think the key to being emotionally strong and to being self-aware is to recognize when those limiting beliefs come up and shrink your thinking, and then take a look at the thing that you're beating yourself up about, because I guarantee it's just fear. You're just afraid. And the problem for most of us is as soon as that fear creeps in and you start going, oh, why bother writing a song? J-Lo already has songs. Why bother writing a book? I mean, Stephen King, you know, how stupid is that? Honestly, how stupid is that thinking? It's ridiculous. There's room for everybody. And somebody else's success just proves that you can be successful too. Somebody else's success just proves that people are craving that kind of content. I need to work on the fact that I feel insecure about my ability to be able to do something to the level that I want to do it. And the smart thing to do with that insight is not to beat the shit out of myself and tell myself, okay, no podcast for Mel. It's to say, oh, all right, well, clearly I care about this. So what do I need to learn? What skills do I need to build? What people do I need to meet? What resources do I need to surround myself? What timeline do I need to create that is supportive of what my true biggest aspirations are? Funny how this tiny little story is indicative of everything that we're talking about inside this course, Best Decade Ever. Because this is the process of pursuing your dreams. It's not only stating them that so you can create them, but it's also, once you state them so you can create them, do not drag that dog out here because everyone, Chris, do not do that because all the animal lovers will scream at you for torturing our dog.
Does this look like torture? Excuse me? No, I don't think so.
No, I know, but still, do not drag him. Okay. Treats. He just wants to hang out with me. See, he's going to be back here in 5 seconds flat. That story is indicative of what you're going to go through. You're going to state that you want to do something. You're going to get all freaking excited about it. You're going to start talking about it. And then someone in your ecosystem is going to announce that they're doing it. Someone that's bigger than you, someone that you admire, someone with more resources, someone with a better reputation, someone with better credentials is going to suddenly be doing that thing that you want to be doing. And then you're going to have that moment of crisis that I had yesterday, where you feel vulnerable, where you feel scared, where you feel afraid. That is what it means to be human. That is what it means to pursue your dreams. That is going to happen to you 1,000,000 times in the best decade of your life. Because when those sorts of things happen to you, it means you're doing something to change your life. It means you're wanting to grow. And it means you're awakening your perspective to all the possibility around there. And some of the possibility is going to be wildly inspiring, and some of it's going to be really confronting. And so what I want to say about Brene launching a podcast is I cannot wait to listen to it. And I'm really excited that a podcast that's about helping people and understanding ourselves better is the #1 podcast in the world right now, because it means that the world wants that kind of content. And that means I'm coming, baby. I'm coming. It also means, because I realize that my aspirations and my dreams are really big, that I got to do the work to put the team around me and the timeline around me, and I got to do the work to develop the skills so that I can achieve the dreams that I really want to achieve. Today's lesson is very short, and it is entitled, Think This, Not That. Yesterday and the past couple days, we have been building on the topic of how you become a deliberate thinker. You have already learned that there are 2 modes in your brain. There's autopilot and the things that you default to, and then there is your ability to deliberately choose what you are going to think about. And when you start to realize and embrace the fact that being a deliberate thinker is a skill, And it is one that I want you to master, and it's one that I want you to practice. Because doing a mindset reset, it's not an event, it's a process. And it's a process that you're going to do over and over and over again. Because the negative and limiting beliefs that you have that are already set to your default, those are encoded in the default network in your brain. And so it's going to be a process that you need to repeat. The second you catch yourself thinking something that is negative or is a limiting belief or is something that was stuck in your mind from somebody in your past, the second you catch yourself defaulting to that, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you're going to switch gears and you are going to think about something deliberate. And so yesterday, your assignment was to notice all day long when your mind was drifting to those default negative thoughts. And what I wanted you to do is I wanted you to write down what are the default negative thoughts that you had throughout your day. And many of you were startled to discover just how often you're thinking really nasty things about yourself. You were bummed and a little bit sad to realize, holy cow, I can't believe how often I tell myself I'm not good enough. I can't believe how often I tell myself that my ideas aren't good and I shut myself up. And there were just as many of you that were liberated when you started to realize, wait a minute, this isn't the voice of God talking to me. This is some programming that's set on default. I don't have to live my life and I don't have to have a future where I constantly say things that are negative to myself. This is the most miraculous thing that I've ever heard. And so what I want you to do in the comments is I want you to write what was the limiting belief or the negative thing that kept coming up, because there were a lot of themes. Christine Nichols said that her limiting belief is that she believes she's a quitter. She believes she can't finish anything. And she started to see examples of it over and over and over again. And what she also started to realize is, holy cow, it's a lie. There's lots of things that I've finished in my life, but if I continue to have the limiting belief that I'm a quitter, if I look out to the future, I will be giving myself permission to not go for harder things. I will give myself permission to quit. A lot of the common beliefs that we heard was that I'm too old. How many of you feel like you're too old to get the things that you want in your life? That is super common. So if you think I'm too old to do this, if you think I've run out of time, if you think, who am I at the age that I am or as young as I am to think that I could do this thing, first of all, you're wrong. And secondly, that's a limiting belief that is stopping you. It's a default mode that we need to get you out of. Huge one for you all was, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough when it comes to other people. I'm not as good as other people. And let me tell you something. This is an epidemic, feeling like you're not good enough, because way too many of us spend our days comparing our imperfect lives to perfect strangers on the internet. And so the feeling like you're not good enough, you're not measuring up, that there's some sort of imaginary race that you're running against the rest of humanity, and that by now, at this point in your life, you're supposed to be at a certain place. And how do you know that? Because every time you look on social media, there are hundreds of people in your face that seem to be at the place that you thought you would be. And so that just reinforces it. And oh my God, the default network is getting stronger. If that's how you feel, you're not alone. That was the single biggest one that we noticed in all of your comments from all over the world. I am not good enough. And we heard loud and clear that you got it from your mom, or you got it from your dad, or you got it from some horrible person that you were in a relationship with. And the problem is you started to believe it, and it got encoded in the default network. So now that you've seen it, good job. You can't get rid of the default until you actually spot it. And now that you've seen it, I want you to realize for the rest of your life, you have a job. And your job is to make sure that when that default network kicks back up and you start to murmur that you're too old, you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, that is a moment where you have got to do a mindset reset. And the way that you're going to do it, because you're learning that there's two modes of your brain, the default, I'm not good enough, and the deliberate, oh yeah, I can try, is we're going to teach you that you can think this, not that. that whenever this default mode comes up of I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not enough, whatever enough is, that you can spot it as the default and you can get deliberate and you can say something different. In the body of this broadcast on Facebook, on YouTube, where else are we putting this?
Twitter.
On Twitter, although it won't be on Twitter, the copy. But in the email that we're about to send you with links to this video, and on YouTube and on Facebook, we are going to give you a very long description of alternatives on how you think this, not that. And we're going to give you some things that you can play around with to insert to start to build a deliberate network. And if you don't like these, no problem. Make something up that you really like. But the point is that if you don't get deliberate, you will be stuck with the default mode of thinking. And the way that you reprogram your default mode of thinking so that the default becomes positive and the default becomes courageous and the default becomes loving is first you catch the negative default, and second, you direct it to something deliberate. So instead of thinking, no one likes me, this is mine because I think I'm a bad person. No one likes me. What I want you to think instead is the right people love me. That's pretty powerful. That's really powerful for me. I constantly remind myself that the right people love me, that the right people are in my life. Instead of saying, oh, nobody likes me or I'm not part of that group, I remind myself that the right people, the people I need, they're the ones that are in my life right now. If you're somebody who says, I'm too old, here's what I want you to say, I have plenty of time. Or you could say, I have so much experience, I'm definitely going to succeed. If you say, I'm too young, then say anything you want, from I have plenty of time to learn what I need to learn, to being young is an advantage, to whatever it is. The point that I'm trying to make is, if your default is negative, I don't want you to think that. I want you to catch it when you do, and then I want you to think this, something positive. If you're constantly thinking, I'm behind, you look at social media and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm losing the race of life. Then I want you to think, I'm on my own timeline. It's not I'm behind, it's I'm doing things in my own time. Another one you could say if you say I'm behind is I'm exactly where I need to be. One of the big things that I always say is that you never move to the next level of your life until you learn the lesson in this one. Instead of thinking I'm not smart enough, I want you to think, if I put in the work, I can do anything. Instead of thinking I'm not smart enough, say, hey, if I put in the work, I can learn anything. If I put in the work, I can master anything. If I put in the work, I can build anything. It's not about smarts. It's about the effort that I put in. That's another thing that you could say. Instead of saying I'm not smart enough, go, well, hey, you dummy, it's not about being smart. It's about the work. Make this yours. If you can make it funny, fantastic, because then that cuts the seriousness that so many of us bring to trying to change our lives. This can be fun, Instead of thinking I'm not good enough, I love this one. How about I'm doing the best I can? Or I'm exactly where I need to be. I think one of the most important things that you can do in life is you can ask for what you need. You can ask it of yourself. You can ask it of your work. You can ask it of your spouse. You can ask it of your family. You can ask it of your friends. And you should. Because when you ask for what you need, you are honoring what's true for you. Now, here's the interesting thing. You might not get it. And getting what you are asking for, it's not the point. When you have the courage to stop listening to those limiting default beliefs and start asking of yourself and asking of the people around you the things that you need, what you're doing in the asking is you are honoring the best part of you. And whatever it is that you receive, trust me, you need this right now because you're learning something in it. There is no experience in your life that is wasted. And so I know that many of you, because I've been reading the comments every single day, so has every member of our team. I know that so many of you are feeling at a very low point. I know you're feeling beaten down. I want to tell you something. There is something to learn in this. And one of the places that you can start is, instead of thinking about how miserable things are, and instead of thinking about how broken you feel, I want you to think about how much you've survived. I want you to think about the fact that even though you may feel broken and you may feel scared and you may feel completely overwhelmed, that in order to get beyond this, you got to understand that the world and your future are not broken and overwhelming. In fact, they are there to help you make the changes that you need. I truly believe this. I truly believe this. And so again, today, you're going to continue what you were doing yesterday, because guess what? Now that I've opened Pandora's box and you understand there's a default mode and there's a deliberate mode to the way that you think, and now that you've spent a day looking at how your default thoughts kind of stink and they make you feel bad, and you realize, wow, I could change through deliberate thinking the way that I talk to myself, this is something you're going to practice for the rest of your life. This is not a one and done. This is not an event. This is a practice. This is a process, and this is a skill. And so here's what I want you to do today. I want you to write down what is in the comments, what is your limiting belief, and what is it that you're going to think deliberately when that limiting belief comes up. So for me, when the belief comes up, nobody likes me. That's the default mode. The deliberate thing I'm going to think is the right people love me. The other one that I have is I'm constantly worried that I'm disappointing somebody. Constantly. And so when I'm worried and I feel that spidey sense come up, that tingly thing that's in your body, like, uh-oh, am I disappointing that person? Am I disappointing that person? Instead of thinking that, I'm going to think the only person I have to worry about not disappointing is me, because I'm the only person that I'm in control of anyway. In fact, I just had a big conversation with my daughter about this, about how we get so wrapped up in our lives about making sure other people are okay. And so we aren't direct, we hide information, we worry about things. And the easiest way to live your life is to just speak plainly about what's true for you. What did I just say earlier? Ask for what you need. And that also includes telling the truth about what you're thinking, about what you're doing, about who you're spending your time with. Because the minute that you're hiding information, you're kind of managing stuff with people, you're now in the default mode, because you're managing disappointing people, you're managing whether or not people like you, you're thinking that you're not good enough, so you're lying and hiding information. That's how the default mode and all these negative thinkings start to creep in and make you do things that you know you shouldn't be doing. But it starts with your thinking. If you change how you think, you will change your life. Mandy, is there anything else that I should be adding in this? In the email and in the body copy on Facebook and YouTube, we will give you examples for think this, not that, but you can create your own. You're too old, you got plenty of time. You're not good enough, you're going to try. Or, oh yeah, watch me. Or I don't believe you. You can come up with anything as long as it empowers you and it's deliberate. And so it's important for you today to write down your limiting beliefs. And then I want you to go through the process, and you can do this in the comments. What is the thing that you're going to think deliberately today? What are you going to choose to say to yourself when your attitude starts circling the drain? And instead of flushing your thoughts down the toilet and the rest of the day with it, no, I'm not going to go down the default network. I'm going to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 make a decision. And I'm going to be deliberate about what I think about today.
Thank you for having me. And you, I think of probably anybody on the planet will get what I'm about to say in your bones, because you understand the profound impact that the 5-second rule as a starting ritual has had on millions of people's lives, helping them move from thinking to doing. And even sitting here, Jim, with you, which it's just an honor being such a fan of your work too, to be here with you. Even sitting here knowing the impact that the 5-second rule has had on millions of people's lives.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something.
What's that?
The high five habit is an even bigger deal with more profound change. And I can't wait to unpack it, but I'll tell you personally, I used the 5-second rule to turn my life around, to go from being bankrupt to being extraordinarily successful, to changing every habit I have, to improving my marriage. It got me into action. But I'll tell you what it never did. It never silenced the critic in my head that I lived with. It never ended the relentless beatdown that I was giving myself. And it never broke the habit that I had of constantly hating myself or focusing on the things that weren't working instead of celebrating myself and focusing on the things that were. And the high five habit cuts right down through all that noise and reconnects you with the you that's in there, with the confidence that is your birthright. And the way that it literally reprograms your mind is breathtaking.
Well, we talk a lot about morning routines, and this was the easiest thing to add to my morning routine. That's given me so much in return, and not just in terms of in a short period of time, in terms of the ripple of it, but even just immediately, just celebrating myself in the bathroom mirror. And we could talk about how that works. I'm also, by the way, pulling back, a big fan of just counting down from 5, getting myself out of bed or getting myself to put on my running shoes. And so I could see the difference and how they complement each other so well. And so maybe we could walk our listeners through this. And I would highly recommend everyone, our audience loves to read, to make sure you get your copy also as well.
Well, so it's very simple. And since I know that your listeners want to get right into the science and right into what to do, I'm not even going to tell you the story, because I did not set out to create this. I created the high five habit on a morning that everybody can relate to, a morning where life felt overwhelming, a morning where I felt defeated, a morning where I felt sort of stuck and dreading the day. And I was standing there brushing my teeth, Jim, and I catch my reflection in the mirror and I think, oh, you look like hell. And then all of a sudden I started to criticize the way that I looked, like the dark circles under my eyes, the bags under my kind of chin and neck, and one boob's hanging lower than the other. And then once your thoughts go negative, they kind of take you down. So now I'm thinking about my day ahead and I'm beating myself up. Why'd I get up so late? And I've only got 8 minutes to the first Zoom call and the dog hasn't even been walked. And you just said something interesting. It's an easy thing. The high five habit is an easy thing to add to the morning routine. We all talk a lot about morning routines. It wasn't until I discovered this that I realized there was a piece to my morning routine I was not even aware of. A habit that I needed to break, Jim. A habit that gratitude and exercise and all this stuff was not actually erasing. A habit of standing before the bathroom mirror and either ignoring the human being you see in the mirror or criticizing them. That is how we start our day. 91% of women don't like how they look. 50% of us can't even look in the mirror. I know it's true for men too. We stand in judgment. And so what happened for me this morning, here's the high five habit. It is profoundly simple. It's going to change your life the second you're done brushing your teeth. And I want you to do it right after you brush your teeth, because I want you to stack this habit with something you're already doing. Because because you listen to this podcast, that it's the fastest way to learn a new behavior. Let's get the gunk out of your teeth so you don't spread dragon breath on everybody. Now let's get the gunk out of your head so you're not spreading negativity throughout your day. As you stand in front of the mirror, I want you to leverage a little piece of research from Harvard. New research shows that if you take less than a minute and you intentionally think about the day ahead and how you're going to show up as a leader, it changes your productivity, your focus, how you show up, and your ability to impact people. Let's throw that out the window in terms of being a leader, and let's look in the mirror and let's use that for ourselves to improve our own lives. I want you to take a second and I want you to realize There's actually two people in the bathroom every morning, Jim. There's you, and there's a human being in the mirror that's been waiting for you to wake up and realize they need you. They're trying hard. They've got a good heart. They need your support and your encouragement. They need you to see them. They need you to love them. That is literally what I'm talking about when I talk about the high five habit, that you wake up and recognize there is a person you go through life with that stares you back in the mirror every morning, and your habit right now is to tear them down or ignore them. And I want you to set an intention, and I want you to look at them in the morning. And this is going to feel weird because you're going to realize I've never actually asked myself this question. And here's the question. What is that person in the mirror? What is she or he or they? What do they need from me today? We think about it for work, for our families, for everybody else.
Yeah.
You've never stopped and asked yourself, looking at yourself in the mirror, how do I need to show up for that person today? Then, as you've got that intention, despite the fact that it feels weird, despite the fact that you're going to resist this, and we can talk about why you're going to feel most likely resistance, I then want you to raise your hand and I want you to high five the reflection. And what's amazing about this new habit, Jim, is your brain and your nervous system are already designed to do the work for you.
Mm-hmm. Because also, you mean, you think about how we high five other people, throughout the day.
Yep.
And to celebrate them, to encourage them, but we're not always doing that. I mean, it's interesting because no amount of love is enough to fill the yearning that our soul requires from ourselves, right? When do we work daily on being in love with that person in the mirror who has been through so much, but is still standing?
Yeah. And think about some of the habits that we know based on research change your life. Meditation. Meditation is profoundly important. The benefits you talk about all the time. Meditation develops self-awareness. It also helps you learn how to be non-reactive to your thoughts, but it doesn't change your default thoughts.
Yeah.
Gratitude, also hugely important, tremendous benefit. Yes, you should have a gratitude practice. However, almost all of us, when we practice gratitude, we think about things outside of ourselves that we're grateful for. And so the high five habit is about bringing the power back in-house. It's about giving you a science-backed tool that will teach you through a simple action how to support, how to love, how to encourage, how to celebrate yourself every single day. And let me explain the science, because this is where things get crazy. The reason why this works is because of the programming that's already in your brain. So you have a lifetime of giving and receiving high fives. In fact, Jim, when somebody high fives you or you high five somebody else, what does the gesture alone of a high five tell somebody else?
That they are extraordinary. They are amazing. Congratulations. You're winning.
Exactly. You don't ever high five somebody and say, I hate you. You always high five and you're like, I love you. We got this. No problem. Go get them. You're going to win. Even if somebody just blew it, you high five them and it's like, shake it off. Come on. I still believe in you. Let's go. And so all of that programming is right here in the interior of your brain. It's in your basal ganglia. It is in your subconscious. It is sitting there and it is married to the action of high fiving. So what happens is when you stand there, you set this intention, you're with yourself, you see yourself, you feel the resistance, you ignore the resistance, you go to high five yourself. Your brain's like, oh, I know what this gesture means. It activates the subconscious programming. It silences the critic and the beatdown. You can't think anything but positive thoughts. It's impossible neurologically because of the programming already in your brain. And then over time, if you do this, give me just 5 days. You do this 5 days in a row, fight through the weirdness because it's new and the resistance because you have the opposite habit. You judge yourself, you reject yourself. When you high five yourself, it silences that. It activates the programming that's already in your brain, and it starts to marry it with your own reflection. And that's not all. I talked to our buddy, Dr. Amen, the other day. He went bananas when he heard about this. He's like, Mel, holy cow. Do you realize you also get a boost in your mood? Because when you high five other people, you get a dopamine drip. So you get a dopamine drip when you do this to yourself. He also said, you know how when you come into the bathroom and you're kind of dragging in the energy, and when you high five yourself, whether it's because you laugh or because you just kind of feel good, you get this little like pep in your step. So you start your day feeling slightly more energized. I'm like, yeah, Dr. Amen, tell me about that. He said, well, that's your nervous system. Your nervous system is encoded with celebratory energy. When you cross a finish line, you raise your hands. When your favorite team scores, you raise your hands. When you say hello to somebody, you raise your hands. When you hug somebody, you raise your hands. When you high five, you raise your hands. Your nervous system remembers it. That's where the energy comes from. The coolest thing about the high five habit, Jim, is the programming is already in you because you've been doing this your whole life for everybody else.
Yeah. And we are hardwired for this.
Hardwired. In fact, when you were born, DNA in your DNA was celebration and joy. Little kids, when you see them in front of a mirror, they don't step back and go, my thighs are fat. Man, I'm a loser. They don't do that. They spin, they high five the mirror, they kiss the mirror, they love themselves. This is your birthright. It was your life experience that taught you to judge and reject yourself. And I'm here to tell you this simple habit of standing before the mirror and raising your hand and high-fiving yourself like you so willingly do for everybody else. Yeah. You don't have to say a thing. You can have resistance. You can feel that it's weird. You can literally reject it in your mind as you start to do it, and you will experience massive transformation as you complete the gesture because your mind is wired for this. You know, my husband, Jim, a lot of people know the story because it was his restaurant business failing that rocketed us into this personal crisis. And that's when I invented the 5-second rule. Well, his best friend and he worked at that restaurant business for 7 years. And at the end of the 7 years, they sold it for a song to a new investor. And our best friend, his business partner, was able to shrug and go, okay, well, that's entrepreneurship. I'm very proud of what we did. I'm proud of how hard we worked. And, you know, did we return the profit we wanted? No, but I'm still proud of myself. My husband couldn't do that. My husband said, I failed. Do you know for 7 years, he has looked in the mirror every morning, Jim, like so many of us do, and dragged his past in there and said, because this thing in my past, I am a failure. I am unworthy. I am unlovable. When I first started this high five thing in April of 2020 to pick myself up after getting fired from my dream job as a talk show host and in the throes of the pandemic and my kids in crisis and the world in crisis and just feeling overwhelmed, Chris couldn't do it. And the reason why he couldn't do it is the reason why everybody's resistant to doing it. It's because he was dragging all of that judgment and everything from his past into the bathroom every morning. And he was saying, because of that experience, I don't see a human being that's worthy of celebration. So if you've experienced trauma or abuse or discrimination, or you've been abandoned, or, you know, you're a human being and you've done things you've regretted, or you wish you could change and you'd forgive Jim or me for it, but you stand in judgment of yourself, you will resist this because right now you see a human being who doesn't deserve celebration. If you're like Jim and I, and you are very much achievement driven, you may realize as you resist this, that you don't celebrate yourself unless you've done something, unless you've worked out, unless you've got the money in the bank, unless you're driving the Range Rover, unless you fix that thing. And what I'm here to tell you is we got it all opposite, Jim. Yeah. You see, we've been withholding the very support and celebration that we need in order to feel inspired, encouraged, and motivated to take the actions that change our life.
So the 5-second rule.
Wait, first off, when did you discover the 5-second rule?
Okay, so 2009.
This is when you first tried it or discovered it, or?
Oh, it's a total horror show mistake.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So 2009, I was unemployed. and feeling like
unemployed? How?
Well,
You
okay.
have too much charisma, too much passion.
Yeah, because everything's working right now. That's why I'm not like this when things are not working.
Sure.
Ask my husband of 22 years.
Yeah.
What had happened is I had all these career changes, and I got into the media business again by mistake. I had a coaching business, and Inc. magazine was writing an article about coaches, and they featured me in it, and CNBC called.
Got it.
And that led to me doing some stuff with CNBC. And I spent a year still coaching people and then doing some stuff for CNBC. And then Fox called. And they were interested in having me host a television show. Now, you got to understand, I'm from North Muskegon, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the media business, Fox, LA. The closest thing I had ever seen to a celebrity, Lewis, was the Muskegon Lumberjacks, the farm team, right?
Right.
From for the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah, the
dad,
AA team or whatever.
Yeah, my dad was the
team.
hometown doc for the hockey team there.
Right.
So I thought,
The mayor was a celebrity.
wow, my life's about to change. I'm about to be a celebrity. Wow, we're going to solve this is amazing, So I was originally going to be hosting a show for Fox where we were making over small businesses.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty cool, right? We show up, we do extreme home makeover for the office. Everybody's happy. We all know that doesn't solve business problems, but it makes for a nice television show. By the time I get to LA, they've changed the format. It's now called Someone's Gotta Go. And I'm going to be firing people on national television from real jobs.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
That sounds fun.
Horrible.
Oh, my gosh.
Plus, we haven't told the offices that this is what we're doing.
Oh, my gosh.
So you show up in Act 1 and you've got everybody all like this because they're going to think they're going to get new IKEA furniture and a paint job, and this is going to be the best thing in the world for their small business. Now, meanwhile, I'm a fourth generation small business owner, so that's like my people. Grew up at a kitchen table with farmers, and my mom had a retail store, and my other grandparents were bakers. And so when it comes to like the heart and soul and what's so important when you launch your own business and how personal it is, I mean, this was like gut-wrenching. So I show up, the first act, you kick out the owner of the company, who then freaks out, then all the employees freak out. Act number 2, we announce that somebody's getting fired, and then that's the bad news. The good news is that I'm not picking. We're going to have you vote somebody out. So it's Survivor in an office place.
Oh, my goodness.
So
That sucks.
when I learn all this, I have a panic attack, even though I'm on Zoloft. And I call the guy that got me the gig and say, you got to get me out of this. Like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And he said, well, I'm sorry, but they've already cast the entire show and you're out there for 5 weeks and you don't have a choice. They're going to sue you. And I said, then fine, get me some Xanax because I don't think I can get through this thing. Like, this is awful. Luckily, we taped 2 episodes and legal tabled it. But here was the problem. I was attached to the show. And I only got paid if the show was shooting. So and being an entrepreneur, I also kind of put all my energy into this, shut down the coaching thing. Really thought that it also kind of negotiated a deal that was a sort of a back end deal, thinking I'm a entrepreneur, always thinking about got to have a piece of the action. Yes,
of course.
That was a dumb move. And I was in a contract for a year while they figured out what to do.
So you couldn't do another show. Yeah.
So, I just felt like I had made a huge mistake, and I felt really embarrassed. And I didn't know at the age of 41 what I should be doing with my life. And while it's neat that I had jumped careers so many times, I started to feel like somebody that actually wasn't successful at all because I didn't have a career track. I had a bunch of jumps from one thing to another. Now, looking back, it makes perfect sense. But standing in the middle of the mess, it just felt like everything was caving in, probably just like when you were sleeping on your couch, feeling injured and like everything I thought that was about to happen isn't happening now. Meanwhile, my husband had opened up a restaurant business. It had been his dream. He worked in high tech and came home one day after getting laid off and said, I'm never going to get on a plane and do a PowerPoint presentation for a company I don't care about or own. And I said, great, what's your plan? And he said, I'm going to open a pizza restaurant. And I looked at him and I said, was there a trust fund that was part of this marriage that I was unaware of? Because I'm not quite sure how we're going to
get the money.
Yeah, exactly.
Did someone die? You got an insurance policy?
Yes. And he said no. And I then said the most famous lines of our 22-year marriage, Lewis. I looked at him and I said, listen, buddy, inspiration is for strangers. You get your ass back to that job and you pay the mortgage and you forget this dream. You're not going to this.
Wow.
So because change is scary.
Yeah.
So we fought and he won. And the first one was a real home run. And
He opened a pizza store.
Oh, he did. Yeah. 40 seats right outside of Boston, Massachusetts. He and his best friend. And they won
Did
Best
well.
of Boston. It was incredible. What do you do when
Did they make
everything's...
money, though?
They did on the first one. So what do you do when
Let's do another
everything's
one.
working? Woo, let's go all chips in. Let's put in the home equity line. Let's put in the kids' college savings. Let's get friends and family. And because you're so excited, you think it's going to work. So you go big, big, big. Well, the second one did not work at all. And it did not work at all so badly that when it was finally closed, it was close to an $800,000 loss. And it meant our entire home equity line, kids' college savings, everything went right down with it. That was right when I lost the Fox show. So I'm unemployed. The liens start hitting the house. The phone starts ringing all the time, and it's collections calls. So you unplug
That
the
would
phone.
stress me out.
Well, you just unplug the phone.
Oh, my
I mean, that's how you
gosh.
deal with that. But I remember I remember two things from that period of my life that were really painful, and one was having to call the town and tell them that we could not afford the $175 for our sixth grader to play soccer, so we needed to pull her out. And I remember there being times, because I was so afraid to look at the checking account, that I would stand at the grocery store and items would scan and I could just feel that wave of anxiety rising, thinking, I don't think the check card's going to go through. And so I would stand there. I always had an excuse, and it was to look at the person and go, oh, that's strange. It just worked at the gas station.
Oh, my gosh.
Because what would have been more empowering is to probably say, oh, well, I guess I don't have the money for this. Let's take this, this, and this. And just kind of like the easiest thing to do is to tell the truth. But I was so filled with shame.
Yeah.
So I started to develop this habit of hitting the snooze button. Because what would happen is the alarm would go off in the morning. And the first thing I would think about is all the problems that we had. And how awfully things had gone off the tracks.
You didn't want to deal with them.
No, and I also didn't think I could. And this goes back to the feelings. Like you think that you need to feel confident or courageous in order to get started. You don't. You actually just have to start, and that's the riddle of life. That lying in bed, hoping that you wake up some morning motivated to change, that's not the answer. You actually have to learn how to push yourself. You have to learn how to leverage the power of your decisions, and you've got to learn how to take action when you don't feel like it. Because every morning when I woke up, I did not feel confident. I felt like a loser. Yeah. I felt like the world's worst parent. I felt like I had failed at every single turn. I did not know if Chris and I could pull out of the spiral. I did not know if we were going to go bankrupt and lose the house and move from our community. I did not know if our marriage would survive. I knew I wanted it to. And see, this is the knowledge action gap. You can know what you want. You can know what you should be doing. But how do you make yourself do it when the feelings and the motivation isn't there? When all you got is fear? And so every night I would lie in bed and I would say to myself, all right, that's it, Mel. Tomorrow, it's the new you. Tomorrow, you're going to wake up and be motivated. You're going to get up. You're going to exercise like everybody says you should. You're going to meditate. You're going to get those kids on the bus. You're going to screw Fox. You're going to look for a job. You're going to cold call Cox Media, and you're going to do auditions. Come on, girl, let's go. You're going to take a cold shower. Woo! Here we go. And I meant it when I was saying it. Maybe it was the alcohol that was talking, but then I would wake up and I didn't feel any of those things. Mm-hmm. So I would hit the snooze. And I would hit the snooze. Now, why was I hitting the snooze when I knew it wasn't the right decision? I'm going to tell you why. And this is something that I was blown away by when I discovered it. You don't make decisions with your goals. You don't make decisions with your prefrontal cortex. You don't make decisions with logic. Do you know how we make decisions? I didn't invent this. A neuroscientist by the name of Damasio, who does his research in Brazil, who gave an incredible TED Talk and wrote about this forever and ever and ever. We make decisions with feelings. 95% of our decisions are made by how you feel in the moment. And that is the problem. You need to take control of the moment and leverage the power of your decisions and make them up here. Because when I was lying in bed, I wasn't saying to myself, I should get up because that's going to help me start my day right. I was saying, do I feel like getting up?
No, you don't.
No. Do you feel like making that cold call? No, you don't. Do you feel like doing that third set of reps? No, you don't. Do you feel like having that hard conversation? No, you don't. Do you feel like ending this relationship, whether it's in business or in your life, that is sucking you dry? No, you don't. We make decisions based on our feelings, and that is robbing you of joy and opportunity. And it is blinding you from the fact that how you change your life is 1 5-second decision at a time, one push at a time. And if you accept the fact that you may never feel ready, and you may never feel motivated, and you may never feel confident, you may never feel courageous, and that's okay, but you can still push yourself forward. What happens over time is, as you start to see yourself becoming the person that takes action, that you start to see yourself becoming the kind of person that speaks even though your voice is shaking. You're the kind of person that has a bias toward moving instead of a bias toward thinking. Guess what happens? You build the skill of confidence and courage. And so what happened for me is I was stuck, Lewis. I mean, I was so stuck. We were heading straight for divorce. We were heading for bankruptcy. I knew I wanted to change things. And so one night I see this commercial. This is the stupidest story on the planet, but this is what happened. I see this commercial. And, again, I also was drinking too much. I mean, I probably had a couple Manhattans in me. Sure. That's my drink. I'm from the Midwest, all just right. Like you. Yeah. All right, little Manhattan there, little bourbon. And there was a rocket ship launching.
On a commercial.
Yeah. And I had this instinct, this innovation, this disruptive idea, right? Oh, my God, Mel. That's the answer. Tomorrow morning, you're going to launch your ass out of bed like a rocket ship. You're going to move so fast, you can't even think about your problems. Dumb, right? Mm-hmm. Totally dumb. See, he's like, this is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. I cannot believe I have this chick on my podcast.
No, I understand it. You got to get moving first.
Yes.
That's the thing. You just got to wake up at 6 a.m. or whenever it is and go into the gym. And when you're in the gym, you're going to start moving the first weight. Yes. And then you'll start moving the second weight.
Actually, people use the 5-second rule at the gym because you know how much time people waste at the gym standing around thinking about the next thing?
Probably 70% of the time.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the next morning the alarm goes off and nothing had changed in my life. I woke up to the lien on the house, the fighting with Chris, the unemployment, the lack of confidence, the lack of courage, the whole thing. But I did something I had never done before. I went 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, just like NASA. I actually counted. And then I stood up and I was like, what the hell just happened?
Uh-huh.
What? That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. The next morning I used it again, it worked. The next morning I used it again, it worked. And then I started to notice something, and this is one of those things. So we have an 11-year-old son who has dyslexia, and when they finally diagnosed him, it was as if, of course, it was as if how could we have possibly missed this? Are we the worst parents in the world? I mean, the kid can barely write, he can't cut his food, he doesn't read. No wonder he doesn't do team sports. Mm-hmm. It was right under our nose, and what I'm about to tell you is right under everybody's nose. There's a 5-second window between the instincts, the shoulds, the urges, the inner wisdom, the things that can change your life if you listen to it. Got a 5-second window from the moment you feel that instinct to move. And if you don't, your brain is actually designed to kill it. 5 seconds is all you have. The second you hesitate, and you feel yourself hesitating, that is a moment of huge power, because what's happened is you've just started to pull back from something that you need to lean into. And if you count backwards 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and this is the neuroscience behind why this stupid little trick works, counting is an action. Counting backwards requires focus. It's also not a habit for you yet. So when you feel yourself hesitate, you're triggering your mind that something's up. Like Lewis didn't hesitate when he pulled on his pants. He didn't hesitate when he's drinking his coffee. He didn't hesitate when he walked out the door to the gym, but now he's hesitating to make that call. Your mind now goes into a cognitive bias called the spotlight effect. It magnifies whatever it was that you hesitated doing.
Mm-hmm. The moment.
The moment. Yeah. Like all of a sudden you're like, hey, I don't feel like it. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'll do it later. Right. And your mind is doing it because your mind's trying to protect you. Hesitation signals a red flag to your mind that something's up. Just that small hesitation. It's a habit that we all have. Should you hesitate if you're getting a tattoo? Yes. Should you hesitate if you're gambling? Yes. Should you hesitate if you are signing a legal document? Yes. You need your prefrontal cortex for those things. You need to interrupt it, make a decision. Should you hesitate on making a phone call? No. Should you hesitate on speaking up in a meeting? No. Should you hesitate when you feel yourself starting to procrastinate and you know you got work that you should get done? No, you shouldn't hesitate at all. Should you hesitate in saying the thing that you really feel in your heart? No, you shouldn't. Should you hesitate and edit yourself when you're talking? No, you shouldn't. But we've all trained ourselves to. So it's actually this habit of hesitating. You start catching yourself. It's a huge moment of power because you have a decision to make and you got to make it in the next 5 seconds. Are you going to go on autopilot and get trapped in your mind? Or are you going to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and awaken your prefrontal cortex and drive forward? So I started to use this rule as I noticed that every day, all day long, I had these moments of inner wisdom where I would know that I needed to pick up the phone and stop isolating myself. I would know that I needed to call a bunch of media companies and start auditioning for radio show hosting gigs. I knew that I should get out of bed on time. I knew I should stop myself before I snapped at Chris, right? Self-monitor.
Yeah.
I knew I should not let the frustration be the things that was driving me. And so I started to use the rule all day long. Whenever I felt this, I should do this, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I would make myself do it. And slowly, 5 seconds at a time, my entire life started to change. And my husband used it in his business, and he and his business partner dove in. They went on to open 7 more restaurants. I went on to launch and sell 2 businesses and get recruited by CNN and join their team. I had a syndicated radio show that ended up winning the Gracie Award, which is kind of the female media, awards for the #1 talk show in the country. And, I never intended to tell anybody about the 5-second rule. First of all, because it's stupid.
Right.
I mean, come on, count backwards. That's the dumbest thing
That's
I've
stupid
ever
to
heard.
me, though.
What?
Anything that works for me.
That's true.
You know what I mean? I'll take any stupid thing.
That's true. But I also was like, how do you start talking about something like that, right?
Yeah.
So I was asked to give a TED Talk like 6 years ago, and TED 6 years ago, not the brand that it was today. They weren't even putting the talks online yet.
Really?
Yeah, the TEDx talks were not online yet. And so that was the first speech I'd ever given in my life. If you want to see what somebody looks like having a panic attack for 21 minutes straight, watch that speech. I was backstage, and it was like one PhD after another going out there. I'm like, what
scientists,
the hell have I gotten myself into? This is the dumbest thing. And so at the very end, I wasn't even planning on talking about it. I say, oh, by the way, there's this thing I do. That's it. I don't even explain it. And you know why I didn't explain it, Louis? I didn't know why it worked.
So you didn't have the science or the research. You were just
Zero. And then something crazy happened. They put that talk online a year later, and people started to write. We've heard from more than 100,000 people in 90 countries that have written to us that are using the rule in ways big and small to change their lives, to change their marriages, to change their thinking patterns, to grow their businesses. We know of 11 people that have stopped themselves from killing themselves.
Wow.
In the moment, there's a gentleman that we talk about in the book, and you can see his social media posts in London. He was a veteran, and he was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, and he boarded a ferry with the intention of jumping overboard. And he got to the railing, and he was standing there, and his inner wisdom kicked in. And this is another thing I want everybody watching to understand. I don't care what you're facing or how low you get. Your inner wisdom is always there. It is. And the thing is that we often don't listen to it. And so he's standing there intending to kill himself, and that inner wisdom kicks in, and he remembers the 5-second rule. And he goes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and he turns and physically moves away from the railing and finds the first person working on the ferry and tells him that he's suicidal. Saved his life.
Wow.
He saved his life because he listened to the inner wisdom. And this is the other thing I love about this rule. It's not something to think about. It's a tool to use. So the part of the problem with a lot of the advice that I've found, for me personally, is that a lot of advice is all about kind of doing mental battle. And if I go upstairs, I'm behind enemy lines, and I tend to get hijacked.
Right.
So I love this tool because 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 interrupts those patterns. It actually prompts the part of the brain that I need in order to change. And it makes changing easier because I've now got my mind working for me instead of against me, and it gets me out of my head. And so I'm super excited to share this rule with people because I now know not only that it's working, not for me, it's working for people around the world. And, in the book, it took me 3 years to write it. It's all the science behind the rule. Yeah. It's got more than 150 social media posts in it. So you see stories from around the world of people using it to end procrastination, to build confidence, to deepen their relationships, to launch businesses, to explode the sales. Why does it help with sales? I'll tell you why. Because you can't sell by thinking. Selling is about action. We have groups from companies around the world, sales teams that put 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 up on the wall. Really? I'm sure they hate me.
That's cool.
Yes, because cold calling, it's a momentum thing. If you stop and think, the dialing is not happening when you're thinking.
Yeah. If you're thinking about all those no's you've been getting,
yes,
you're not going to want to do it again because it doesn't feel good.
Yes, and if you're in the middle of a negotiation or you're in the middle of a really difficult conversation, and again, remember what we said earlier? You cannot control your feelings that rise up, but you can always control how you think and what you do. So if you're in the middle of a difficult conversation and you feel those feelings come up that normally trigger you to start editing yourself or to censor yourself or to silence yourself or to think sabotaging thoughts in like a business negotiation, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, awaken the prefrontal cortex, get back in the game. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.